You ever wonder what it's like behind the scenes at a Chick-fil-A? What is the secret sauce in their customer service? Well, today we're going to peel back the curtain so you can look a little bit behind the scenes. It's more than just serving the Lord's chicken. It's a nonstop grind between managing your team, delivering top-notch customer service, building a corporate culture, and then dealing with some really crazy customers. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. If you think you can handle it, we'll show you behind the scenes what happens at a Chick-fil-A. Welcome today to the Will Frederick Podcast, where we talk about real estate, wealth building, money, and life. And today I'm joined by two very special guests as a very well-known company that they work for named Chick-fil-A. So I have my good friend Joe Pumilia, and who I've known for many years. And Amanda, what is your last name? Sorry.
Bickford.
Amanda Bickford. I'm sorry, I should have asked that before we started the podcast. Amanda Bickford and Joe Pumilia. So Joe and I guess we've known each other for a number of years. You're also an investor, but you run two of the most successful franchises in the world, I would say. I mean, not necessarily ham and beans, but Chick-fil-A's just got such a great name for customer service. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. What is the secret sauce in Chick-fil-A's customer service? So I know that y'all are well known for your customer service, but first, before we get into that, I wanted to kind of give each of you a chance to talk a little bit about your background, how you came to Chick-fil-A, and what your experience has been with it, and then I'll just kind of go through some general questions about it. So.
Yeah, I'll try to give like a quick version of my story. Kind of like I was sharing with you. I started with Chick-fil-A in 2001, so I've been with Chick-fil-A a long time. But really short version is I worked for my dad, who owned a construction company. And I kind of tell our team this all the time, is he would pay me when he got paid. So I didn't always get paid. And so as soon as I turned 16, I wanted to get a real job. And so there's a mall nearby that I applied 10 different places. I never even ate at Chick-fil-A until I started working there. And so I applied 10 different places. Chick-fil-A was the first one to call me back. And so I signed up and started working there. And I always like to tell this little story, like the Truett story. So if you don't know, Truett Cathy's the founder of Chick-fil-A. He passed away a little over 10 years now. But one of the main reasons I stuck with Chick-fil-A is it really is like a people business. And so Truett Cathy would always say that. And so I got the opportunity one time to meet Truett. And so the story is me and my brother wanted to go meet Truett. That was our goal. Mm-hmm. So we saved up like $200 and we drove to Atlanta. And I tell our team this all the time. It was before we had GPS. Like we had the MapQuest, like where you would print it out.
Yeah, you print it out.
print out the map.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we had that, and it took us probably 10 hours to get to Atlanta, and it probably should only take 6 or 7. And so we finally got there. We stayed at a really cheap hotel, and it was one where they had one iron for the whole building, and you had to give them your driver's license. I remember that. We had to give them our driver's license to use the iron. So we were low budget. But anyway, the next day we went to the home office and we said, "Hey, we're here to meet Mr. Truett," and they said, "Does he know you're coming?" We're like, "Nope, we're here."
We just came, you know.
And so we really didn't know what we were doing. But
that's hilarious, man.
But they let us. But the lady said, she said, "Hey, if you want to wait around, like we'll see. He might be able to meet with you." So we waited an hour, and he spent a whole hour with us. He took me and my brother in his office, and
that's incredible.
And he has kind of like a treehouse office. And he called it his treehouse, and yeah, he spent an hour with us. He really just talked to us about like just really not much about business at all, just about being a young man and like what it means to be a young man and growing up to like with values and everything. And then he asked us where we were staying, and we told him. He said, "Oh no," he's like, "You can't stay there." He's like, "It's dangerous." And so he wound up paying. It's the first time I ever stayed at a Marriott too, was that night. And so he wound up paying for us to stay at a Residence Inn where you each had your own room. And so we were we were blown away. So it was really at that time is where I was like, man, like this guy's the real deal. And,
yeah, that's incredible.
Like, he really is a people in the people business.
So
that's why I stuck with Chick-fil-A.
How long had you been working for Chick-fil-A at the time?
I was probably 17 years old. It was probably a year or two after I started. Yeah.
Wow, how cool is that?
Yeah, and so I knew my operator at the time, who's still an operator in Covington, and he was a great guy. And then I got to meet Truett. And I was like, he's a great guy. Because he actually paid for our dinner that night, too. He told us, he called the steakhouse place. He's like, I got these 2 boys coming. And he's like, just give them whatever they want, and I'll take care of the tab. And then also he said, call your mom and tell her you're not going back there and that everything's okay. And we didn't even go pack. That was the funny thing. He told one of his guys, he's like, go pack up all their stuff. I don't want them going back to that hotel.
Wow.
And so he really obviously went the extra mile for us. And we were just blown away. We were really like, obviously my family was blown away, everything. And
so we're not even getting into the
I'm sorry.
What
that's why I stuck with Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, and the big thing I'm taking away is that the culture of the company comes straight from the top. The guy who started it, I mean, you just said it. He went above and beyond. And isn't that what Chick-fil-A is known for?
Yeah, we call it second mile service.
And it comes straight from him. That's a really awesome, just incredible story.
And so that's why I stuck with Chick-fil-A so long. And that's always said, is like, if I could be a local operator similar to how Truett treats people, like that's what I want to do.
Wow.
And so I'm kind of stuck with it since then.
Yeah.
And here we are.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what, 23 years later?
Yeah, 23 years later. Yeah, I've been in California for a while, at a store in California for a while. And then we came back here in 2018. And that's how we are now.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Well, thanks. I've known Joe for years and I didn't know that story.
Yeah.
So tell me about you, Amanda.
So I was in college at Southeastern. I just needed a part-time job, just something, I could go to school and work. And I applied for Chick-fil-A. It actually took like 3 months before I heard back. And I was working another job and I was like, I could work 2 jobs. So I ended up having 3 interviews and then I got hired. And so it's like, okay, I worked 2 jobs for a while just as a team member. And that was my intentions, just a part-time job. I was planning to go to nursing school and I hated college. I was like, I tried, but I just hated like science. And I was like, nursing school's not going to work out. I got accepted into nursing school. Everybody's super excited. And I was like, no. And so I started just, digging into Chick-fil-A and I became a team leader. And I was like, okay, I'm like really content as a team leader. And then I started training to be a shift manager. I didn't even know I was training. I was just going with the flow, just trying to learn as much as I could. And then I really enjoyed the role a lot. And that's kind of when I decided, I was like, I enjoy my job. I love coming to work every day. And just the people around like really made a difference. And so I just made that decision. I was like, I'm not going to go to nursing school. Like, that's not for me, but I'm going to make a career out of Chick-fil-A. So I've been with Chick-fil-A for about 5.5 years. I met who's now my husband. So it's been the greatest decision of my life. So it's like work aspect and just like personal life.
Yeah.
It's just like the people around us like really like made a difference for me. And then like all of the leaders that I worked under really helped me grow as a person. And so I was just like, this is where I want to be and this is home. So that's just my story.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'll just have a question for you. You said you interviewed 3 times. So what that tells me immediately about Chick-fil-A is it's a selective process. It's not just like, oh, you want a job, you got a pulse, come work for us. You have to make sure it's a good match, right? I mean, is that what you found through that interview process?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like even that waiting period of, I put in an application, I was like, I didn't get the job. And then 3 months later, and I was still very interested in like each interview I had, they had trick questions. And like, even I remember like Miss Jen was one of the people who interviewed me and she told me, she's like, I try to trick you to see like test your character. And so I passed the test, but it was really like, it's really a selective, process. And I think it's needed.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's great feedback. The other thing I want to say that you mentioned, but Joe didn't mention this yet, but I know this because we had talked about it before, something that's called a Chick-fil-A-ship, right?
Yeah, that's what you call it.
You met your wife, right?
My wife. There's a ton of stories like that. I mean, like, and it made me think about that whenever you said it. Like Dan Cathy was the last CEO, and he used to do this thing whenever he would have like a leadership conference, like for young people, and he'd be like, "Stand up if you're single."
Are you serious?
He would. I don't know if he does it anymore, but he used to be able to do it. And he would say, "Hey, you go meet her. You go meet her."
That is awesome, man.
And he was like, and I mean, another fun part of the story is like, I mean, whenever I was dating Roseanne, my wife, her dad. That's what your dad said, especially being an operator. Her dad was like, if Chick-fil-A is good with him, I'm pretty sure he's clean. Because they do their background like.
Right, he had some hoops to jump through that, probably similar to the father. That's really funny.
Yeah, so it's like a dating service too.
So, this is not what this podcast is about, but if you're looking for the right one, you might find it if you go apply at Chick-fil-A, right? Well, that's awesome, y'all. So I really want to, as a business owner myself, and we strive in our business, and I've actually used the term Chick-fil-A customer service as we coach our team members on how to serve people and be in that people business. So I wanted to take the opportunity, to have such honored guests in our presence because Chick-fil-A has just a legendary reputation when it comes to customer service. So how do you do that? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so that's why I asked Amanda to come with me. Is I think Amanda knows more of the nuts and bolts of every day. I think, but I mean, the big picture is like we really do believe we're a people business. Like we really, really believe that. And I remember one time Truett even said that. He said, it's like somebody said, what happens if you can't get chicken or whatever? He's like, well, we'll probably sell hamburgers. He's like, because we're a people business. And he's like, we'll just sell something. We're just really good with our people. And I think that's first is like really just being convicted. Is like we're really in the business to try to make sure that people are taken care of, and that the people that come and work with us are going to really become the most professional, like leaders and the best people they can do. So I think it starts with that, and like I think getting the right people. Yeah, I think that's like the number one is just getting. I would say that. I mean, Amanda would know better, but I mean, I think if you hire a good person that kind of has those values already embedded in them, the training's pretty easy. So I think it's really I think a lot of it's getting the right people.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the first thing is, the selection of the interview process is trying to find, the best selection. You have people who will just come to work just, for a paycheck. And then you have people who are really invested in, like, what they do. And then once they get in the business is, like, finding the potential. It's just, like, if you see somebody who you just see a little bit of potential in them is, like, nudge them. Like, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to do, even in the business? Right. And then just like working with them, like encouraging them, and like really spending a lot of time developing somebody who could eventually become a leader. Yeah. And then also our leaders is just spending so much time to like draw out what they have inside. And I think that's what's really important, because without like the leaders are probably one of the most essential parts of our business, is just a leader who can guide the entire team day to day.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you say, Amanda, is there has to be some element of coachability, because everybody's got some greatness in them. And if they're willing to respond to the right stimulus, the right coaching, the right guidance, because I know I've been a beneficiary in many places in my life of coaching and training and people that pour into me, mentorship, stuff like that. And what I'm hearing you say is, like, you start with the right person. You got to have the right soil. Yes. But then you also got to plant and water that seed in that soil, right? Is that kind of how Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, for sure. And that's what like we're big fans of Patrick Lencioni's like books and stuff. And so one is like, he talks about humble, hungry, and smart. And it's like, that's what we're looking for. Like when we're looking for the people in the soil, like the humble, hungry, smart is the big one.
We use that a lot in our interview process, humble, hungry, and smart.
Yeah, and that's what we do too. Yeah. I mean, like in our interview process.
I didn't know that's where it came from, Pat Lencioni. I know his stuff, but I didn't.
Yeah. So obviously he's a ton of books, but that one, The Advantage, is a really good one. But yeah, I mean, I think it's like getting the right people, and then we teach, and Chick-fil-A teaches is like the raving fan strategy. Is like, the main goal is to create raving fans out of our customers. And so with that is like the way we kind of break it down is like operational excellence is like you just got to be really good at what you do first, and then the extra mile. So we talk about second mile service is going above and beyond and finding ways to go above and beyond.
That's awesome.
And I think empowering the team, like, and I think trying to teach the team and empower the team that like, hey, you're going to make mistakes sometimes, but just try something. Like, just try to go talk to a customer. We empower them to, to give away ice cream or whatever. Like really just try and empower them to go the extra mile. Because we do believe that's what creates raving fans, like where they're going to go tell other people about Chick-fil-A.
Well, and you just said it yourself for your personal testimony about your relationship with Truett. You showed up like a total stranger. He made time in his schedule for you, then paid for your dinner, paid for you to stay at a better hotel. Like, that is second mile. That's so impressive to me. Like, I just heard this story for the first time, and I'm like still blown away. Like, that's educational for me as a business owner. So, and it truly flows from the top.
And I think, I think that's kind of what blew me away. And I think the sense of humility is like, the guy, he was a billionaire at the time, and he the sense of humility, right? Yeah, of like we're all in this together. Yeah. And even his son Dan and his grandson Andrew is the CEO now. And they're the same way. You would not know who they are. Like, they're just the most down to earth people. And they really do, so the corporate purpose of Chick-fil-A is to glorify God. And so like they truly are convicted of that purpose, is to glorify God by being a faithful steward like no matter where you're at.
Right. Of all he's entrusted you to. I've modeled my personal mission statement after Chick-fil-A's, because after you shared that with me actually years ago.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like the Kathy family, because I remember talking to Andrew about it before, and I asked him, I was like, what keeps you engaged and excited? I was like, you obviously got plenty of money. Like, you're obviously all right.
Yeah. You don't have to work anymore.
Yeah. And the guy's working. I'll tell you, he works a ton. Like, he works a ton, and he is like engaged, like in the business, and he is like very dialed in to making Chick-fil-A the best it can be. And he really said that. He's like, honestly, Joe, he's like, I'm going to answer to God. He's like, I truly believe I'm a steward of what God's blessed us with, and I have to be a faithful steward.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
So it's like, work as if you're working to the Lord, and from the top down.
Yeah, 100%. He's working for a different goal. He's not just working for a paycheck like you mentioned, Amanda.
Yeah.
He's working for God, and that's, whether or not the paycheck comes, which I believe that if you do things unto the Lord, like glorifying God, the paycheck's going to come. Like if you serve quality, and people will always pay for value if you're providing value, and if you're doing things as unto the Lord, like there's really no much more value you can provide. You're trying your best, right?
Yeah.
So, when it comes to employee selection or team member selection, one of my questions was like, how do you train that conscientiousness? But what I've heard you say is it's not necessarily something that, you might add on to the base they have there, but it's something that's within them already, that they're conscientious. You're just showing them how to do that better, right? Like a better system around that.
Yeah, I would say like when we're hiring people is we really try to hire people who care. So like once you notice like they care, it's just teaching, developing that skill of caring for others.
Yeah.
Because you have all different types of people who come to Chick-fil-A. You never know what they're going through.
Right.
But if somebody truly cares, everything else will follow.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Because I think you can't teach them to want it, but you can teach them if they want it. They're going to make mistakes, like you were saying, Joe, but you can teach them how not to make fewer mistakes by wanting it in a different way or better, Yeah,
and I think, one of our core values is committed to growth. And so we talk about the committed to growth piece comes with coaching. So it's like you have to have that vulnerable-based trust, and you have to be vulnerable. And I think, it's so crazy because, I've been with Chick-fil-A so long, but I've talked to other people that come from other restaurants where, if a team member did break something, like they were really nervous. Like they might get fired, they might get in like serious trouble.
Yeah.
And, and like just creating a culture where it's like, no, we know you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, you're going to break something.
Something.
Right.
And I tell everybody that all the time. We tell our leaders, like, this is your playground. Like whatever you want. We tell them that all the time. There's so many things you can learn at Chick-fil-A, like on the business side, besides just selling chicken. And I tell them, it's like, man, like this is a good place to learn it. Like, if you're going to mess up with me, you might lose us a couple $100, but it's going to be better than, your next job, you might lose thousands. Right. You might get more trouble. Yeah. so it's like, make your mistakes with me, so that way you can get better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I think me and a lot of operators view our restaurants it is kind of like a college football program. It's like you get some good people, you train them and move them on to like whatever their next goal might be.
I remember one time reading a story about Andrew Carnegie. He called an employee into his office that just had made a decision that lost him like $1 million. And this is back in the day when $1 million was more than it is today. And the employee was so nervous, thought he was going to get fired. And, so he comes in like, what's Andrew Carnegie going to say to me? And Andrew Carnegie's like, what are you nervous about? Calm down. He's like, well, I just lost you $1 million. I'm sure you're going to fire me. He said, why would I fire somebody that I just invested $1 million in their education? Like, this is an investment. We've learned $1 million lesson. We're going to have to put that to work now. So let's do it. You know?
Like, I don't want the next guy to benefit.
Exactly. Right? You just learned his lesson. I don't want him to benefit. I want to take advantage of that. Yeah. So that's a great mindset. And I hear that in what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, one of the questions I had was systems versus relationship, because I know Chick-fil-A uses a lot of systems. Interesting. So we didn't talk about that before. That's just something that I was like, because I'm a big systems person. I know if you have a protocol, if you have like a system to do something, that's going to ensure some quality, right? But there's also a very relational aspect to what Chick-fil-A does. And you can't just follow a system. Sometimes you have to break that system to go that second mile service. So tell me about that. I saw something go on there, so I want to explore that. Let's talk about that.
Kind of like, I guess, like the background. So, so whenever I started Chick-fil-A as an operator, like 11 years ago, we did like right over $2 million in sales. And if you're not doing $3 million, it's hard to make money. And but I think as we started getting to $4 or $5 million in sales, I think the systems was like, I think that's why I learned, I guess, was like systems have to run the business and then people manage the systems. And I think, systems is like what we talk about all the time is like, you cannot depend on a person to be the one to make something happen. For scaling, you just can't do it. I mean, especially in our business, as you can imagine, we get call outs every day. People call out of work and, and team members move on to different things. And so for us, systems is like critical.
Yeah, I was just kind of piggyback on that. It's just like, obviously he said like systems run the day. You just like want to have a clear, system and procedure for a team member to like be given a sheet of paper and know how to do something. There's no, like, what do I do? It's very clear. But then also, coming into the relationship side.
I would say something like I've kind of like, I don't know where I heard it, but something like with competence plus warmth is like how you win. And I think it was an Amazon thing that talked about that. Is like, Amazon, you see them as like extremely competent and, but then even if you do deal with their customer service, it's actually pretty good. And so I think that's what I've learned too is like, with our Chick-fil-A's is I think that the systems has to be the competence piece. And then, and then the warmth comes from the relationship piece.
Yeah.
And, and I even learned that with our employees. Like I never forget this guy, he quit and he told me he wanted like a $4 raise or something. And I was like, yeah, I can't do it right now. And so he was like, well, I'm going to go work. It was Walmart distribution. And, he came back 3 months later and he's like, man, I was literally just a number there. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I was like, you'll grind it and you're a number. And, I said, that's where Chick-fil-A is different. Is like, we do expect you to perform probably at the same standards or level that Walmart expects you to perform. But you have a person, like when you mess up, you have a person to talk to.
Right, yeah.
You have a person to kind of carry you through life. Whereas you're literally just a number. If it doesn't work out, it's like the next number's up.
Well, and I know I've known many people that have worked for Chick-fil-A and have been operators and just employees. And I know for them, you do feel like more than a number. It's because it's about a personal growth journey. And Amanda, you were talking about this earlier because you're pouring into them, you're training them, and it's not just about becoming a better, server of chicken. It's about becoming a better person because that is a product. Like you become a better server of chicken if you're a better person, right? So I think that would be a good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something that we've been preaching a lot. Like we have Destiny who works with us too. And that's what I've been really pouring into her is like, she's really big on, we have like pod leaders or kind of like team leaders in our business. And then obviously with managers and then directors are kind of the top level. And that's what we've been talking about is like, we have to figure out how to make better people because we know better people make obviously better workers, better leaders. And, in the past, I think I've always kind of done these kind of like one-off, like we call them ISI group is Iron Sharpen Iron group where we'll get leaders that want to come together and it might be like a money topic or anything. I think in the past we would do it almost anybody that wants to come. But I think now I'm at a point where it's like, okay, like, no, we're going to make you come. Like, we're going to make you get better. Like, you have to learn how to manage your money and manage your time because it's gonna show up at work because it does. Like, if they're not developed in that, it shows up at work in a bad way.
There was a group of guys I went to college with, and they had a guys group where it was iron sharpens iron, and they called it, what the element on the periodic table is for iron? You might know that. Fe. They called it Fifi. Iron sharpen iron, Fifi. Anyway, just a suggestion. If you want to, ISI cohort might be a little bit more professional. But anyway, Iron Sharpener, just Fifi. I thought that was really funny. So core values, how are the core values of Chick-fil-A? How does that influence operations and customer interactions? I mean, we've kind of already hit on this a little bit, but like, what are the core values of Chick-fil-A and how does that?
So I will say, I mean, so Chick-fil-A corporate kind of has their values, and then our business is really called Faithful Stewards of Tangi, doing business as Chick-fil-A. And so we have our own core values and our own purpose. And again, that's kind of like the history of me, I guess, as an operator. Is like, I think we started out, and you probably know it too, as you start a business, like the first few years is like, how am I going to do this without killing myself? And be able to pay the bills. You're
making it up as you go along, kind of like you're patching it all together.
And so I think over time, we've kind of, our purpose has changed to being a people business, where it's genuine. I get more excited about people growing and developing than sales even. And so I think, so we've kind of developed our own core values internally for our restaurant.
Yeah, so we have 6 core values, yes. So our first and like most important one I always say is being customer obsessed. because nothing else is going to flow if we're not customer obsessed. And then the second one is being caring, and then committed to the pursuit of excellence, committed to growth, committed to stewardship, and then committed to the team. So every time, like if I do have to sit down with a team member that aren't meeting expectations, we have what's coaching notices, and it does have all of our core values listed. And it really says, like, in this moment, like, you weren't customer obsessed or you weren't committed to the team. And so all of our coaching opportunities is we go back to the core values and we're like, this is like where we need to improve on because, you know, you weren't customer obsessed in this situation.
Yeah. And that's what I was, I think over time, again, like I think, you know, our policy book is like 120 pages, you know, so it's like 120 pages. It's like nobody ever really reads it. Like I get that, but it's like, it's obviously there because our lawyers say we have to have it there. And so I think that's what we transitioned to saying like, hey, we're just going to lead from our core values. And it's like pretty much anytime a team member breaks a rule or does something good, even it's like, it's usually going to tie to one of those core values.
Of course. Yeah, it has to.
And so if it doesn't, it's probably not a big deal. And so I think that's where we've really transitioned a lot, is like really coaching through those values. Where it's like, and I don't know if we're doing it anymore, but we used to really email the candidate like in the interview process and like have them tell us which core value like they're most excited about, and like almost like before you even start. So before you even start working for us, we just want you to know what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
Like you're signing up to be coached. You're signing up to be committed to stewardship. So, you know, if you give out too many sauces, somebody's gonna tell you something.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so like you know what you're getting into.
They may or may not have given out too many sauces to me because I already.
They give them to everybody. I catch them.
Okay, good.
They're like, well, I'm customer obsessed. I was like, well, there's a balance.
Yeah.
I was like,
right. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So give the customer what they want.
Right. Yeah. Well, so tell me about community engagement, because I know Chick-fil-A is a big kind of servants of the community. How does customer engagement or community engagement play into what y'all do?
Yeah, I mean, so that's transitioned over time too. I mean, I think that's really interesting because I think back whenever we were lower volume stores, like, you know, obviously we'd do anything we could just to get our name out. I think as some stores got bigger, it not necessarily fell to the backside, but it just the demands of the business just got so crazy.
Sure, yeah.
And so I think the last few years we've gotten better at saying like, hey, we got to really get back plugged in to the community. And so, I mean, really, I think for us in our restaurants, I mean, like I'm like we're really passionate about education. Like we know education is extremely important to our community, so we're passionate about that. So we try to do almost anything we can with education.
Yeah.
And then like really, it's really sad, like homelessness and hunger too. And so we donate pretty much all of our food. All the food that we can't sell during the day, we donate it.
Oh, that's awesome.
To like the food shelter. And, but yeah, I think it's really just, I don't think in particular. I mean, we really just kind of anything that we can get plugged into to help, and we have the time and the capacity to do it. We try.
Yeah. Well, y'all have always been very active in our community. Like even before y'all had the second store here, I remember, you know, being at different community events, and Chick-fil-A was there in a real present way.
Yeah, and that's what I said. We're trying to get better at being intentional about it, but we really just kind of anything that comes up.
Yeah.
Like, if we got the time and we can do it, we'll be there.
So, how do you maintain like consistency in your within your own customers, like your team members, like satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and just maintaining that retention of good employees? Because I mean, I would imagine, and you may or may not know the stats on this, but I would imagine y'all have pretty good employee retention. People come and they stay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the numbers so it's about 60% year over year, which is high for the restaurant industry.
Okay.
So it is.
Yeah, I didn't even know
that.
It's
Still a lot, but it's high for the restaurant industry.
60% retention, or okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because we have a lot of part timers.
Sure, yeah.
College kids will work for a year and then kind of move on to something else.
I would say probably the most important is protecting our culture. Just because if somebody's really unhappy with the culture, if it becomes a toxic culture, they're going to search for something else.
Yeah.
So we do have like an open door policy where if a team member is having an issue with another team member, a leader, like they always know they can come to a director and really let us know. And then we always do like, you know, we always like make it like where we have healthy conflict within the work environment. So they really can go to that person and say like, hey, like the way you treated me in this situation, I didn't feel appreciated. And I think because of the culture, it helps, us maintain good workers over time.
Yeah. And I would add, I think something I learned was, like no gossip policy. Like I think I really like, so we're still obviously not perfect, but we've improved a lot over the last 4 years. I think me having to like really define what is gossip in the workplace, and then we do it, we call it a vision and values dinner where we go over it with every team member. And then, I think we're pretty strict about it. Like I really we'll warn somebody once, and the second time we let go of them. Like we just really don't let people talk bad about somebody else unless that person's present. And, so we're pretty firm.
Yeah, you can say it to my face, but don't say it behind my back, right?
Yeah. And that's what we do. And that's what we say. Don't say anything negative about the person unless they're there or to somebody above them that can do something about it. But, and we tell them that. I give every employee my phone number. And I've had a few times, I tell them if you feel like something's not being addressed right, text me. And so they'll text me. And usually within the next day, like I'll grab everybody involved. We're not leaving this table until we get it figured out. And I think they just know... Like we take it really serious, like gossip. Like I hate it. Like it's really,
And I think even going back to that, we always tell the team members, like if you have a real issue, like we're going to address it. But if you're just complaining, to somebody who can't do anything about it, that's not effective. So like even in the moments, if I'm just like walking through the store and I hear people complaining or gossiping, like I'll pull them aside and be like, hey, like what's going on? Do we need to address this issue? And I think over time, like it's really become a positive culture. And so because of that, we have people who love their job, they stay longer. And it's just that I love coming to work, and a lot of team members have said they love coming to work because we don't accept bad,
it's uplifting just all the way around. Like it's a place you want to be,
Yeah, and I would say that for Amanda's team, really. They really have a really strong like family. Like, it really does. Like, even when
one person takes off, the whole team wants to take off.
It really is.
Oh, really? They're all like, what are they doing?
Like our events we do and everything, everybody shows up, and and I think it is because of that. And I think it's even when y'all did have problems, like y'all sit down and deal with it.
Yeah, and even in the moment, like if somebody's yelling at someone, a leader will step in and be like, hey, like this isn't acceptable. Like, go take, we always call it a freezer moment. Go take a freezer moment, go calm down, walk in the freezer for a second and come back, out, not yelling at the team. So like, we're not gonna, let it happen and 24 hours later sit down and address it. Like we're gonna address it in that moment. Because if you don't address it in the moment, the 10 team members really don't feel appreciated.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So tell me one of the biggest challenges y'all have faced, over, like just bigger scale challenges over the years, and how you've addressed that challenge.
I think the biggest challenge I ever faced was COVID.
COVID.
Wow, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
I think the rules that were put in place were like nearly impossible. Like they were literally impossible to follow. Like the 6-foot rule at Chick-fil-A. It's just impossible.
Our store's not that big.
It's not built for it.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the hardest. And then shortly after that, hiring and staffing was extremely hard. I think, whenever all the government money was everywhere.
Oh, yeah. People were being paid to not work. Instead,
And so I think that staffing has always been the biggest challenge, is I think because you do get to like, Jen was there, and I remember having this conversation where we really got to a point to, she was pretty firm, like we're not going to hire just anybody, and like be, that whole saying of slow to hire and quick to fire.
Yeah.
And, but we were pretty desperate. So
Yeah.
we probably did make some bad calls. And, but I do remember that. I remember one time we had the dining room shut down already because of COVID stuff, because of staffing too. And then we had to shut down one of the drive-through lines. And I was like, man, the next thing is we just shut down the store.
Yeah.
I was like, it's getting close.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, we did. I'll be honest, like we had some bad apples.
Yeah.
And I was there every day with them. I was like, we just got to do what we got to do to get through this.
And the Jen he's mentioned it, by the way, it's funny because I know lots of people at Chick-fil-A, but I go to church with a lot of them. Like they work with y'all, and Jen was one of those ones. She moved and we sold her house, and unfortunately are sad to see Dan and Jen go away. But anyway, so it's kind of fun to hear stories about people I know from a different angle, and I know
that's what's really cool too. Over time, I always think about that. Is like I said, we are a business where people come and go, but it's like really neat to look back and see the influence of all those people. And even if they didn't even work together, like they set up the next person to kind of take it from there.
That's really cool how y'all really built that culture over time.
It is. It's really neat to just see how we've grown just from previous people's work being built upon with the next person.
Well, I have to say, I'm just very impressed at the culture that Chick-fil-A has, and I always love, going there. And honestly, I'll tell you, like, there are other, like, I love Popeyes so much. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody. I don't love Chick-fil-A as much, but guess what? If I don't have like 45 minutes to go wait in Popeyes line and deal with the, foolishness sometimes you got to deal with, I mean, I'm like, hey, I just as soon go to Chick-fil-A because it's it's really good. I don't dislike it. I love Popeyes, but sometimes I just don't feel like it, because I'm like, man, I'm not, because it's just a good culture. I mean, I got to go get me some Jesus chicken, right? Yeah. Use that term. So I do want to hear, because it's funny to me, every time I go through Popeyes, I'm always just like flabbergasted by how poor the customer service. I mean, like every time it's like I got to text my wife and tell, guess what just happened? This is ridiculous.
Remarkable.
Yeah, it is remarkable. It is absolutely remarkable, and it's the opposite effect at Chick-fil-A, and I really appreciate that. So thank you all for doing that. But I gotta believe I think I'm a pretty reasonable customer most of the time. I give grace to people, like if I don't get perfect customer service, but I have to believe that that's not everybody who walks through the doors of Chick-fil-A. I would love to hear a story or two or whatever y'all want to share about somebody that came in that is just unreasonable, unpleasable. Like sometimes you can't make everybody happy, right? Yeah. How do y'all deal with that? And if you have a specific story, I'd love to hear it.
I can't think of anything. I mean, I can just remember random little things. Like even last week, a guy wanted a milkshake and fries at like 7 a.m, and we don't do fries at 7 a.m, just because we just don't have the capacity on the machines to do it. He was pretty irate, and I was in the drive-thru, like I was coming through. He was in front of me, and the guy jumped the curb and like peeled out.
Oh wow!
And I was like, man, I was like, that's kind of like, that's a little dramatic.
Wow.
He didn't want his milkshake, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, he ordered a milkshake, but
he ordered a milkshake and fries, and the girl, she was really good. She told him, she's like, sir, we can't do the fries in the morning. Like we do the hash browns in that machine. We can't do both at the same time or whatever. And she explained it, and he was like, I just really, really want fries. And she's like, I'm sorry, we can do hash browns. He just wouldn't have it.
He's like, I'm going to McDonald's.
I think a story that I have it actually happened this week. So I've been like working really
fresh on your mind.
I've been working really early mornings, training a new manager in the morning. And if you don't know, like we're not allowed to put creamers in coffee just because of food safety reasons. Like we're touching their creamer. And so after COVID, like we're not allowed to do that. Well, I guess was very adamant. He's like, I want my creamer in my coffee. And I was like, hey, like I really do apologize.
Is this a government regulation or is this a
Chick-fil-A?
Okay, so it's
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, it's Chick-fil-a. We used to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then Chick-fil-A realized I shouldn't be doing
I apologized to the guests and I was like, hey, like I really do apologize, but Chick-fil-A states that we can't do this. I was like, it's a food safety concern. And I was like, we cannot do it. So he got really mad. He's like, y'all are just lazy. Y'all don't want to do it. Y'all care more about your speed than serving the guests. And in that moment, we tried to de-escalate any situation.
Sure,
so I was like, hey, like I really do apologize about this. And so he was pretty upset about it. He's like, can I get a refund? And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna give him a refund, give him what he wants in that moment. But there's not much more you can do. If you apologize, and try to like resolve the issue.
And that's what's been crazy. I think my experience with Chick-fil-A, that's the world we're in now. Is like it's really hard, because like you would like even Truett back in the day, you'd be like, yeah, just do whatever the customer wants. And I think, but now you are getting like so many like lawsuits and stuff where like, and they have a word for it. I forget what it's called, but they have a word where they try to trap you into something.
Yeah. Yeah. I was even thinking just now, like it's really hard for me to like be uncomfortably mean to people, like intentionally, but like maybe I should go test it out on y'all one day. Like try to be just a really aggravated customer, and I wouldn't do that.
I've always said,
I would say during the right after COVID that was a rough year.
Yeah.
That was a rough one. I remember
Why? Because of people coming in there trying to...
We had a poor girl working in the drive-thru, and these guys came through the drive-thru, were messing with her, and the manager was like, hey, just get them out of here, like whatever, just get them out of here, whatever. And then I can't remember exactly what happened, but basically the guy threw the milkshake at the girl.
What?
And then, yeah. And so the manager went and locked the window as fast as he could. That was crazy, because then he pulled around, and then he went and locked the door because they were about to come inside.
Oh,
so he
wow.
locked the door, and he called the police, and they wound up arresting him because the guy was banging on the window trying to come in. I can't remember, but that's the crazy thing. It was during the year or two after COVID. Like it seemed like the world went crazy.
Yeah.
It was almost like
Crazy
month
time.
to month. Yeah, I don't know if we have time. I can tell you another story.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Because this was a funny story. It was on Saturday, and Roseanne, my wife, had to pick up a nugget tray for something.
This past Saturday?
No.
Okay,
This was like
just
a
a while
year or
back,
two ago.
okay.
Yeah, it was a Saturday though, and like, so we went. I told Roseanne, I was like, hey, if you want to go, I'll be honest. Like sometimes, like it's hard for me just to go in and have a quick lunch, like because I'll either talk to people or it'll draw into like a 2 or 3 hour.
Oh,
thing.
sure, yeah.
So it's not like a quick lunch. So I told Roseanne, I was like, she wanted me to go with her, and I was like, cool, I'm cool with it. Just realized it might take longer than just picking up a nugget tray. So it did. So that's what happened. We went in, and so we ate, and I was in casual clothes, like I was in normal clothes, and the whole family was in casual clothes, and I remember this. It was probably like a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old in the playground, and I think the 2-year-old pushed the 4-year-old or something in the playground, and the parents got into it.
Oh,
like,
so
outside.
Unrelated 2 and 4-year-old. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. So the 2 and a 4-year-old were in the playground. I think the 4-year-old was trying to put their shoes on or something. The 2-year-old was really just being a 2-year-old.
Yeah, I mean,
pushed the 4-year-old or something. And the two parents, like one of the parents stood up and said, who's the parents of that kid? And the other family stood up as a dad, and he's like, I am. So they were starting to get into it.
Oh,
and
my
like,
gosh.
The first mom was crazy. Like she was crazy. She went crazy.
So
like,
if you're watching this
screaming.
first mom,
I know.
you're crazy.
I don't think she would.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was going crazy, and they were like arguing with each other. And so I can't remember exactly. This was kind of funny. So her and her friend went outside and ate in their car. Like they ate on their trunk or whatever. I was like, okay, cool. Like they got the kid and they left and everything.
Yeah.
And then I saw her kept looking in. Like I was paying attention, and she kept looking in. And then she started walking back, and I was like, oh no. Like I didn't know if she got a weapon or something. So I was like, man. So I walked out there, and I was like, ma'am, you should probably just like leave. Like just leave. Everybody's calm down.
Yeah.
And then she, I wasn't wearing Chick-fil-A stuff either. So she was like, so she started screaming at me. She's like, you can't tell me what to do. You can't tell me where I can be. Like all that kind of stuff.
Actually, I can. I'm the owner. So.
Well, then that's what happened. So the police were coming. Like they were just eating. They were coming in to eat.
Oh, there was some police coming.
There were police come. They eat with us all the time. We feed police for free. So they're there all the time.
Right. That's awesome.
And so they were coming in. And then they saw her screaming at me, and they looked at me, and I was like, she's not okay. And that's what wound up happening was like she went crazy, and she was screaming. She's like, she was like, my baby daddy's gonna come down here and mess y'all up and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, this ain't okay.
Wow.
It was crazy. And
drama at Chick-fil-A.
It's so funny. So she wound up. So the police wound up arresting her, and they asked me like, do you want to push? I was like, I don't want to press any charges or anything. But they're like, do you want to ban her from here? I was like, well, that's how she's going to act, probably. Yeah. But anyway, then the dad came to get the kid. They had to hold the mom while they were waiting for the dad to come. The baby dad did have to come.
Yeah.
And then the baby dad said, she probably deserved that. He said,
he's like,
he was a cool guy.
Yeah,
he said, she is crazy. That's what he said.
Oh, that's funny.
But it was like a 3-hour ordeal.
Oh, yeah. That's probably the last time Roseanne said, hey, let's go have a quick
we
lunch.
joke about it all the time. I was like, how much time do you have?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that story. That's fun. There's always crazy stories behind the scenes, right?
There's always something.
I've always said, and it's like my life motto, is just like kill people with kindness.
Yeah.
Because when they're throwing a fit, the kinder you are, the more... I mean, they get mad, but it's like, I'm not going to, buy into it, but I'm going to kill them with kindness. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do.
Yeah. My dad says that a lot, actually. Kill them with kindness. And I always kind of use that. Well, I try to use that motto. Sometimes I need a freezer moment. I'm like, I need to go chill. Yeah. But I think if you can kind of keep that, that consistency of just killing them with kindness and just kind of almost being ridiculous at how overwhelmingly kind you're being, they begin to see how ridiculous they're being.
When y'all said that happened with somebody at West Hammond, right? Like the first year they had a lady that would come and complain all the time or something. I forget who it was, but then she comes all the time now.
Yeah.
Like loves our
Oh yeah. So we had a regular Miss Lynn, like she would come every morning, and she was always, she would always.
Is that a real name, or did you?
No,
take that?
I mean it is. I love her.
Lynn might be watching.
I absolutely love her.
Yeah.
But like she would give us a hard time, and we just kill her with kindness. She's a regular all the time, and it was even funny. Like whenever I was pregnant for my son, she bought him a little gift for his like baby shower, and like every time I walk in, she's like, "How's Wyatt doing?" Like she knows my child's name. Like she's super friendly now. So that's all we did is we kill her with kindness. Yeah. She comes in with like her dad every morning, and
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny because as you said that, I have a client like that. Her name is Una Richardson. Now that's her real name, and she and I laugh about this now because when I engaged to sell her house, she was not in a very great. It was not a good time in her life, and she was very, very mean and ugly to me, and I just was like. I was just like ridiculously kind because I knew what she was going through. I was trying to, just kind of love on her a little bit. And she was just persistent. Like ugly. And now we're good friends because she was like, after the closing and everything went well, it went well. But she was like, she realized, and I think she probably realized during the process, but she realized like, man, this guy's just not going to give up being kind to me and working for my own best interest, even though I'm not giving him a whole lot of like things to go on. And so now we're really good friends. And she always, like every time she talks to me practically, and if you're watching, she's like, "Oh, Will, I'm so sorry. I was so mean to you." And I'm like, we laugh about it now. I'm like, look, that's okay. It was like a good test for me. And it was, and it allowed us to build a better friendship. Like Miss Lynn's, I love her now,
And I would say like, so I think it's probably on YouTube, but if you look for like Chick-fil-A, Every Life Has a Story. So Chick-fil-A made this video and it kind of does that basically. It goes through the dining room and it kind of just shows like everybody's going through something different in their life.
Yeah, that's true.
You just don't know what's going on in their life at the time. Yeah. And so it's basically just teaching Chick-fil-A is like, hey, like love everybody. Yeah. Because you just don't know. You might be the one person that smiles for them that day. You might be the one kind person to them that day.
Right. And you had, they could have just gotten the worst news of their life. Yeah. If they snap at you, it's not about you necessarily. It's about what else is going on. If you can make their world a little bit better in that moment, Jesus chicken. I love it. I love it. All this because of Jesus chicken. Anyway. So, thank y'all so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. Do y'all have any final things y'all like to share? Any final
I don't think so. I think we kind of covered everything. The biggest thing I think is the culture. Like I would say, I kind of mentioned it. Like I read a lot of books, and Advantage is a really good one.
The Pat Lencioni book, right? Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I've learned a lot about culture today just from sitting with y'all, and I really appreciate the example that Chick-fil-A sets for a lot of other business owners as we model ourselves, and this has been an educational thing for me. And I wanted to share with our clients just because you hear what they do and how they do it and why they do it. And I think that's a big part of it. So that's the kind of thing that we want to encourage just, in my own business and just I want to praise that in other businesses and highlight that and say thank you for that. And then just think about how you can implement that in your own life because I think we can all kind of do a little bit to make the world a little bit better place.
For sure.
So
thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all. And thank you for joining us today on the Will Frederick Podcast, where we talk about real estate, wealth building, money, and life.